News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, at least 6 of today's national newspapers carried the story of the Sir Keir Starmer basically being accosted by protesters yesterday. They had it as their front page news. All of them had some kind of variant of specifically blaming Boris Johnson for what happened. Lots of them demanding his apology. The Daily Mirror declared that this is why words matter, this is why truth matters. Well, I, for one, completely agree. The truth does matter. So with that in mind, let's be sensible. This group didn't accost Starmer yesterday because Boris Johnson made some random comment about Jimmy Savile the other day in the Commons. They were more than likely going to do it anyway. Anyway, Boris Johnson, he's been busy ignoring all the fuss and instead doing a reshuffle. What do you think to all of this? And should kids be able to access online porn? Of course not, if you ask me. And the government has today unveiled their plans to stop them doing so. Common sense or what? But some people are against it, citing the invasion of privacy. Come off it. And how is your weight? If you're someone who struggles with it, very soon you could have something that is going to help you. A weekly injection might be on the cards to help you fight those pounds that you cannot shift any other way. Is that a good thing? And another Dane, another footballer showing themselves to, quite frankly, be a bit of a disgrace. West Ham player Kurt Zouma has been forced to apologise for hitting and kicking his cat. Who does that? Well, there's lots of demands that he should lose his job. Should he? We'll have all that to come and more, but first, the latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. The top story. NHS waiting lists in England will not start to fall for at least 2 years and may double during that time. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, unveiled the NHS recovery plan in the Commons earlier today. Among his ambitions are to reduce the waiting time to fewer than 12 months by 2025. The number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment in England now stands at 6 million. That's up from 4.4 million before the pandemic. Mr. Javid says the plans will transform the NHS.
This bold and radical vision has been developed with expert input from clinical leaders and patient groups. It won't just reset the NHS to where it was before COVID, but build on what we have learnt over the past 2 years to transform elective services and make sure that they are fit for the future.
Sajid Javid. Well, the Prime Minister has announced a small ministerial reshuffle today, as you've been hearing. Let's take a look then at some of the changes. Jacob Rees-Mogg has been moved from the Commons leader to Minister for Brexit Opportunities and Government Efficiency. That's in the Cabinet Office. Mark Spencer has been made leader of the House of Commons. Stuart Andrew is our new Housing Minister. And James Cleverly will become Minister for Europe. The mini reorganisation follows the appointment of Stephen Barclay, the Cabinet Office Minister, as Mr Johnson's new Chief of Staff. Documents show the Foreign Office has been a target of what they're calling a serious cyber security incident. Recently released information shows experts from the security firm BAE Systems were called in to deal with it at a cost of just under £470,000. It's not clear who was responsible or what the effects of the attack might have been. There's been no further comment from the Foreign Office on the incident. Now, the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has said it was inappropriate for Boris Johnson to claim Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile. That comes after the Labour leader was targeted by a crowd protesting against COVID measures yesterday, but some of them did shout Savile at him. At least 6 Tories, including a former cabinet minister, have linked the harassment of Sir Keir to the Prime Minister's Savile claim. The Prime Minister tweeted describing the behaviour towards Sir Keir as disgraceful. However, Sir Lindsay Hoyle reminded the House today that words do have consequences.
It's been reported that some abuse was directed to the Right Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition, yesterday, related to claims made by the Prime Minister in this chamber. But regardless of yesterday's incident, I made it clear last week that while the Prime Minister's words were not disorderly, they were inappropriate. As I said then, these sorts of comments only inflame opinions and generate disregard for the House, and it is not acceptable.
Speaker of the House earlier. Now, energy regulator Ofgem says UK households could face a further increase in energy prices, especially if there's a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The chief executive, Jonathan Brierley, told a cross-party group of MPs that an invasion would drive up gas prices and ultimately affect customers when the price cap is reviewed in October. Ofgem announced last week the cap on domestic fuel prices would rise by 54% from April the 1st, impacting around 22 million households. The Chief Medical Officer for England has written to unvaccinated NHS staff, telling them it's their professional responsibility to get jabbed. Professor Sir Chris Whitty tweeted the letter, which was also signed by the Chief Nursing Officer and Chief Midwifery Officer. Last month, the Health Secretary told the Commons the legal requirement for NHS staff to have the jab was now under consideration. A former pontiff, Pope Benedict XVI, has asked for forgiveness over his handling of clergy sex abuse cases, but admitted no personal wrongdoing. An independent report commissioned by the German Church criticised his actions in 4 cases while he was Archbishop of Munich between 1977 and 1982. The report also criticised his predecessor and his successor, estimating there'd been at least 497 abuse victims in the Munich Archdiocese between 1945 and 2019. Here, people who are overweight in England and Wales could be offered a weekly NHS injection to help them shed the fat. Experts say the treatment induces a feeling of fullness, which makes people eat less. It's estimated the injection can help overweight people lose an average of 2 stone in body weight. It's been approved by the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, which is recommending it should be made available on the NHS. Lastly, entertainment news for you, and a number of British stars have been nominated across several categories in this year's Oscars. Olivia Colman, Benedict Cumberbatch and Andrew Garfield are all up for Best Actress and Actor. Sir Kenneth Branagh's film Belfast has picked up 7 nominations, including a nomination for Best Director. The Academy Awards due to be held in Los Angeles at the end of next month. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, we've got Joanna Williams, who's the author and academic. We've got Peter Edwards, who's the former editor of Labour List, and Harriet Sargent, the journalist and author. And also, you know the drill on Dewbs & Co. It's not just about us and our thoughts, it's about you at home and yours. What's on your mind tonight? And let me know what you're thinking about the stories that we are discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Also, as well, we're on all the different social media sites, so wherever you want to check out what we're doing, feel free to do so. And by the way, if you've got any strong thoughts on this whole porn story that's going on today, you might have seen it. The questions are around under 18s having access, easy access to online porn. The government's come up with a plan to try and stop that. Do you think that the plan that they've come up with is going to be enough to protect kids from, let's face it, what is pretty gross content? We've got a poll running on our GB News Twitter as we speak, so cast your vote there and we'll come back to that at the end of the show. Now, you might have seen the footage of Keir Starmer being bundled into the back of a police car yesterday after being jeered at by angry protesters. Lots of that footage, of course, is circulating on social media. Now, many are directly equating what happened yesterday, specifically and directly to the Jimmy Savile comment that Boris Johnson made in the Commons last week. Now, I have to say, several Tory MPs have called for Johnson to retract the claims that he's made. Boris is having none of it and has instead been busily refocusing, should I say, on reshuffling his cabinet today. Harriet Sargent, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think it is entirely wrong that MPs are mobbed outside the Houses of Parliament like that. I mean, I think we all agree about that. That is awful. But is it, Labour's a little bit pushing this, I think, making out that this is just all sort of Tory. I mean, Labour is the party where we had John McDonnell calling for people to lynch Esther McVey. I mean, a Labour MP asking people to lynch a woman, that's hardly sort of kind and caring of the Labour Party. And there's numerous examples like that. The other point that I think is quite interesting is that actually, if you listen to what Boris was saying, it's actually quite accurate. I mean, what he's saying is, why should I be held accountable for what went on in Downing Street, which I didn't know about? If that's the case, then Keir Starmer has to be held accountable for what went on in his office when he was chief prosecutor. And what went on there is that there were 4 serious allegations of sexual assault by Jimmy Savile. And these were not listened to, nothing to do with Keir, another prosecutor, not with him. But when he appointed a QC to look into this, they found that the prosecutors and the police had behaved with undue caution that was simply not justified, and I'm quoting, nor required. So, it's if you're going to do that, then you've got to, I say, either both men must be held to account or neither.
Yeah, Peter, I don't want any MP to be, it must be quite frightening actually, being surrounded by a horde of people shouting whatever it is at you. I wouldn't want to be in that situation, and I don't condone that situation. But I guess what I found quite peculiar is this kind of direct correlation to people saying, right, what these people have done is directly because of what Boris Johnson has said in relation to the Jimmy Savile claim. That just doesn't wash with me. Your thoughts?
I don't think it's peculiar at all, and I don't think what Boris Johnson said was accurate at all. It's completely inaccurate, and Boris Johnson created the false impression when speaking under parliamentary privilege, i.e. he couldn't be sued. He created the false impression that, one, Keir Starmer was to blame for the non-charging of Jimmy Savile, an evil paedophile, and secondly, he was involved in the decision. He was not involved in the decision when he ran the CPS, and in fact, he commissioned an inquiry into why this didn't happen. And I think, hold on, Harriet, I didn't interrupt you.
Sorry.
Harriet made the point that what Boris Johnson said was accurate, but then conceded, which I don't agree with at all, but then conceded that Keir Starmer had no involvement. And I think, go on to the broader point, words have consequences. What John McDonnell said 4 or 5 years ago was completely wrong. What Boris Johnson said was completely wrong. Boris Johnson is Prime Minister, and it's not just me or the Labour Party that thinks Boris Johnson should apologise, it's his own advisor who quit over it, it's his own party, it's the independent meter who reported the words Savile in the mob this week.
Well, yeah, Joanna, they shouted an awful lot of stuff, didn't they? And the bit that's been amplified across much of the media is the Savile comment. But this whole, this whole accusation about paedo apologists and all the rest of it, that has been a smear, if you like, that's been thrown at people, as one of our reporters, by the way, Tom Harwood, experienced himself, I think it was in June or July, whatever, last year.
I've got to say, I think this incident has been massively overinflated. I mean, the idea that this is front page news, that 12 people, I mean, that's all it seems to be. This is a tiny number of people who weren't protesting against Keir Starmer as such. They were actually protesting against lockdown restrictions and against vaccine mandates, and they just happened to come across Keir Starmer, it seems to me. There was no violence. You know, they were criticising him. And I actually think in a democracy, you know, we do have the right to talk to our MPs. We do have the right to criticise them. And the idea that our MPs should be sheltered from interacting with the public, and let's face it, even quite vocal, loud interactions, I think that's got to be acceptable. Now, yeah, of course, words have the power to move people, to inform people, to trigger people's emotions. If we didn't think that, none of us would be sat here this evening. But at the end of the day, the only person responsible for someone's actions is the person who undertakes the action. The only person responsible for shouting pedo or Jimmy Savile or what was shouted, you know, which, like I say, was one person shouting this once or possibly twice, and yet this is a major national news story. The fact that it is that case just absolutely beggars belief as far as I'm concerned. But the only person responsible for shouting that is the person who shouted that themselves. You know, because Boris Johnson just said something doesn't mean that he should be held to account for how other people might interpret or how they might act on the basis of having heard those words.
Joanne, I have to say briefly, I know you've got to move on, but a lot of that was nonsense, and there's a particular point of disinformation when you say that protesters have a right to speak to MP. The footage we saw, that wasn't a request for a meeting. They weren't having a cup of tea. They were harassing him, and that's why police, who are pretty experienced and good judges, bundled him into a van for his own safety. It was not a meeting request, it was harassment, and one has to be realistic about that.
I didn't say it was a meeting request. You know, I'm absolutely not naive. You know, I've seen the same footage that you've seen. But walking down the street, if you walk down the street, you're going to overhear comments, you're going to overhear people talking. People may shout things at you if you're a public figure. You know, that happens. And
but that's not what happened here. So you're knocking down a paper tiger. What you're describing did not happen. You're describing something different, a lot more benign, that's in your own mind. Look at the footage.
I've seen the footage. Thank you very much, Peter. I've viewed that footage several times now. You see a small number of people shouting, and our MPs do not deserve to be wrapped up in bubble, segregated from the rest of society, cordoned off and kept in a little sanctuary away from the public. Our MPs live in the real world. They live in the same society as the rest of us. And part and parcel of being a public figure is that you're going to come across members of the public, and some of those members of the public might be extremely angry about things that you have done or said, and they have that right to express that anger.
2 people are arrested, so it's a lot more than about peaceful protest if you're arresting people.
Well, I've got to say, I ran twice in a general election, and had I been successful in my quest, I would have really wanted security, I think, around me. And I think that's a sad state of affairs, isn't it, if MPs do need security at all times. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. And you've just segued nicely for me there, Peter, because one of the things that I have noticed going on, you can't help but notice that actually, is all of the kind of freedom convoys that's taking place predominantly in Canada, it has to be said. We touched on this yesterday. But it's really kind of striking me at the moment how much groundswell, if you like, these kind of protests are getting. There's a lot of people that are very angry at so-called establishment. We use that word often, don't we? But it means different things to different people. But really angry at various things that are going on in their countries at the moment, restrictions, whether it's vaccine mandates, etc. And yeah, we've seen convoys in various places now, in Belgium, Germany, Czech Republic. As I mentioned, in the whole Canadian thing, they've set up a state of emergency in one of the Canadian places. And Joanna, your thoughts of this? To me, it feels that so many people are just getting so frustrated at the moment. I do worry about where it will end.
Well, I'm cheering them on, I have to say. I'm saying, like, go, these Canadian truckers. I'm really pleased. I think this is a very, very positive development. And I think anybody who believes in freedom, who doesn't want to live in a society where people are regulated by vaccine passports and have vaccine mandates imposed upon them, should also be cheering these truckers on. I mean, the fact is we were put into a state of lockdown or semi-lockdown for the best part of 18 months. And these truckers, you know, they didn't have the luxury of sitting at home with a laptop, having people bring things to them. They were the ones who were out there keeping the economy, such as it was at that point, going. They were the ones who were providing food to our supermarkets, providing provisions to our hospitals. And the way they're being repaid across that American-Canadian border is they're being told that essentially they will be unable to carry on with their job, because as soon as they try to cross back from America into Canada, if they haven't got a vaccine passport, they'll be expected to quarantine for 14 days, or for a period of time, which will make it impossible for them to earn a living. So I'm absolutely not surprised they're angry. I'm not surprised people in New Zealand are angry, people in Belgium, across Europe. You know, people are furious, and I think they're right to be furious.
Peter, are you furious about all this?
Well, I think I'm furious, probably the exact opposite of Joanna. There's so much I disagree with, but the reason why most major countries have laws about using the road is for safety and the safety of other people. So, you know, if you have people blocking the road, preventing an ambulance getting to a heart attack victim or to a mum in labour having difficulties, why would Joanna cheer that on?
Yeah, but hang on, because that convoy...
then you cheer them on.
No, but they're allowing emergency
vehicles.
They're allowing emergency vehicles through, so I think I need to be clear to them on that. Harriet?
Well, I find it's very interesting that apparently, according to the Canadian Trucker Association, 90% of the Canadian truckers have been vaccinated. So it's more about this anger that is seizing so many countries, that we've all emerged from lockdown, and we all seem to think that we were just going to get back into ordinary life. But we have been changed by the last 2 years. And I think the things that have changed us have not actually come out yet. I think in this country, Boris was very sensible in that he really fought hard not to go into that final lockdown. And what is happening in other countries shows that he was right to do that, because people are exploding all over the place with anger and fury at what has been done to them.
Who was Boris fighting to avoid going into lockdown, given that he's the Prime Minister? Yeah, who was he fighting?
Well, there was a lot of people, there's a lot of pressure from Labour, there's a lot of pressure from all kinds of institutions not to go into that lockdown.
But he's the Prime Minister.
Yes, but we live in a democracy.
But he's the leader. It's up to him to make the decision. I don't think he was bullied into it, but by SAGE or GPs.
I think he had a lot of pressure not to do it, and he decided to do it.
I think the fact is, on these protests, which is what we're talking about now, there's no point rehashing arguments about who or why Boris didn't take us into lockdown. The fact is, these protests are incredibly peaceful protests. I think there's been 2 arrests in total since these protests started. There's no evidence whatsoever that they're blocking ambulances from getting to sick people. And I think, you know, you really are naive if you think that people are not angry at the restrictions that they're facing.
I didn't say that. You're angry every time we have this discussion about the restrictions. I'd make a different point. It's not down to individual protesters to enforce the rules of the road, and we can't rely on their goodwill to let us through if we're sick.
I think people do have the right to protest. And
no one's saying they don't have the right to protest. It's saying if you let an ambulance through, that is a judgment for essentially the police and the people operating the roads. It's not for random individual citizens and us to be left reliant on their goodwill whether to let through an ambulance to look after our loved ones.
Well, let me know your thoughts on that. I think that I find it fascinating what's going to happen with this whole kind of freedom convoy situation, because some of you might remember the whole kind of Gilets jaunes. It started off as a yellow vest thing. I think it started off about fuel in France, and that took on such a... it snowballed, didn't it? It went on for an incredibly long time, and I wonder where this protest is going to end up, how far spread, and it divides opinion. Lots of you, I know, I can see the messages flying in, lots of you are on the side of the protesters, lots of you are absolutely not. You can email me gbviews@gbnews.uk and tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about online porn, and specifically about whether or not you should have to prove that you're 18 and over to access it. I say absolutely. Many people would disagree, saying, what about our privacy? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Just a brief reminder as to who the panellists are. We've got Joanna Williams, who's the author and academic. We've got Peter Edwards, who's the former editor of Labour List, and Harriet Sargent, the journalist and author. Lots of you guys have been getting in touch about those last couple of comments we've just had on Boris Johnson. Richard says, how come no one really cares so much about when people like Nigel Farage, etc., were getting intimidated? Albert says, Keir Starmer needs police protection. Lots of you are suggesting, well, lots of you are asking, why wouldn't you, if you were Keir Starmer, transport yourself via the car between your meetings to avoid these kind of things? Some of you suggesting, well, why would you have to do that? I am interested in, is there a line, and what is that line about where the public can interact with the members of Parliament? Who decides what's allowable and what's not? When does frustration become harassment? What is that line? Some of you might remember. I was just about to say you might remember, and then I've just completely forgotten. The Punch, Prescott. How can I forget John Prescott's name? Yeah, someone was...
Threw an egg in his face in the general election.
Yeah, and what did he do?
A left hook or a right hook pretty quickly.
He did indeed.
A chap with a mallet was the egg thrower, and other people remember his haircut more than the egg, I suspect.
Yes, actually, you are quite right. His haircut, yes. See, I wonder, in fact, no, I won't say the sentence I was about to say. I'll get myself into trouble. I was thinking out loud there, but maybe you might get my point. Anyway, lots of you as well responding on the trucker situation. Malcolm says, I can agree with the sentiments of the protesters, but not with their methods. John says, thank God for the truckers. We need those protesters here. Linda says, I am with the protesters. Thank you so very much for giving up your time, standing up for democracy. Avery says, good for the truckers. Our freedom now has been gradually eroded and we need these protests. If we don't, that freedom will never return. And our every move, she says, will be orchestrated, restricted. What do you think to that? Neville says he totally supports the truckers. Would you support the truckers if they were blocking your workplace, your road? Let me know your thoughts on that. Now, let's talk online porn, shall we? Because an online safety bill will force websites to prevent underage access to kids, basically, making sure that everyone has to verify their age to access it. They'll do this by requiring a credit card or like a third-party service, basically to confirm that they are over the age of 18. If the sites fail to act, the independent regulator Ofcom will be able to fine them up to 10% of their annual worldwide turnover, or they could block them from being accessible in the UK. According to the government, under the new bill, children will be better protected from online pornography as it goes further than the existing protections. Basically, it brings all the websites that show this kind of content into the scope. But I wonder, I mean, to me, it's very common sense. Should kids be able to access online porn? Well, no. Who on earth is going to say, yes, they should? But there's been lots of pushback, actually, against some of these proposals from people that are citing privacy, saying that, actually, this is a step too far to have to verify yourself and your age, etc. I find that argument bonkers, quite frankly. Joanna Williams?
Well, I think it's good that we're having this conversation. I think it's really important that we do have a national debate, really, about the propensity of pornography online and the harm that that does to young people. And I am very, very concerned about this. You know, I'm mother of 3 teenagers, young adults myself. And, you know, it does disturb me, the amount of pornography that is available and the readiness with which it is accessible. But I think because I've got 3 teenagers, young adults, I'm also not naive. And to me, it just seems like what's being proposed here is completely unworkable. It won't do what it's supposed to do. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who, when I was 16, was faking ID to be able to get into nightclubs and pubs. You know, and as far as I'm aware, this is still what young people do nowadays. It just seems that any young person who is really determined to access pornography will find a way around this in 2 minutes. And the other problem, I think, is the fact that pornography is so completely ubiquitous. You know, it's there on Twitter, you know, any site that you put in, you can just stumble across pornography accidentally, it seems to me. And so the idea that you're going to put a password, credit card protection thing on Twitter, on Instagram, on all of these different social media accounts, you can't do that. So I think in that context, teenagers determined will find a way around it. There's so much of it and it's everywhere that it can't be regulated. You do then have to look at what are the consequences of implementing this legislation in terms of people's privacy.
But Harriet, the point that Joanna raises to me is the key one, because will people be able to get around it? Yeah, I'm sure that they will. You know, kids are a lot smarter online than anything else.
I'm more worried about, hopefully they won't be, I'm more worried about children of kind of 9, 10, 11, who are seeing really appalling images, can access disgusting things. I mean, even before they've had their first kiss, they've seen, you know, I won't go, goodness knows what, and this has been a sort of untested experiment on young people, exposing them, which has had all kinds of influences on behaviour. You just have to talk to teenage girls of 15 or 16 and hear how boys are treating them because they've watched so much pornography from such a young age, and expecting these girls to do things because they think they should be looking like a kind of pornographic star or porn, you know, rather than just a normal flesh and blood person. So let's try, at least to try and stop very young children watching this stuff.
Absolutely. Declan's got in contact saying, when I was a kid, Michelle, we used to get the oldest looking lad to head off to buy a copy of The Sun purely for page 3. He says kids will always find a way around any rules and laws. And yes, I get that sentiment, Peter, I get that. But surely, I mean, I was researching something for a completely random topic. It was absolutely nothing to do with anything adult content-wise. And we was looking in the office and the most horrific, it was just awful porn, I won't describe it, but the most horrific porn came up in response to this. It was such a normal term that I'd searched on social media, and it presented some really vulgar porn content. I'm struggling not to describe it because it was horrific what I saw. And I was thinking, if any child was researching that phrase as part of their homework, because I can't remember the phrase now, but it was nothing. That's why I can't remember it, because it was a nothing phrase and it presented awful content. So I'm in favour of anything that would try and help this, even by a small fraction.
Well, we're talking about different things. On the particular point you're making, I believe that if you're typing in essentially a bland, neutral, everyday term and you get a pornographic pop-up, I think there are programmes and blocks and filters you can put on kids' computers. On the broader issue, I think none of us, despite our different perspectives, none of us want children to see porn. It's a pretty horrible prospect. And I want to make a broader point. I try not to make everything party political because some problems are intractable, there are short-term political pressures, and people get bored of banging on about party politics. But my worry is, after 12 years of a Tory government, the internet is still a bit of a Wild West, whether you're talking about sexual content or the proliferation of gambling sites and the lack of controls, or things like self-harm material. And the Tory government did have a try, I think, in around 2017 to pass a bill on this, which was not successful, and there was feedback from the industry, bizarre as it sounds, that the measures are unworkable. So I think this, sadly, is a bit of an admission of failure.
But what would Labour have done differently then? You're saying this is a state because of the Tory government. What would the Labour government have done differently to stop that?
Well, you have to ask the Labour Party that. But my view, and sometimes people in politics are afraid to say this, but I would just be in favour of more regulation.
But, sorry, this is a complete and utter myth that the internet is like a Wild West, and you hear that phrase bandied around so often. You know, we've got the state knocking on people's doors. Harry Miller up in Humberside, you know, he retweeted a limerick that poked fun at the idea that you could change your gender, and the police knocked on his door to check his thinking. Up in Scotland, you had a woman, Marion Miller, who posted a photograph online of suffragette ribbons. Someone complained that it looked like a noose, and the police knocked on her door.
What do those examples prove? I'm not sure, because you're talking about police action, and this is a debate about online regulation. So
I'm talking about the police are spending a lot of time looking at Twitter, at monitoring people's tweets and responding to complaints about social media content online.
How much time are they spending?
I'm afraid I don't know,
exactly.
Peter.
So
but what you're saying, I agree with. If they have time to go knock on people's doors about individual tweets, they can surely do something about online porn.
You've got that, you've got the state censoring, but then you've also got social media companies themselves who spend a great deal of time regulating who is allowed access to their site. Donald Trump booted off Twitter. Feminists who are gender critical booted off Twitter, booted off these social media platforms. So you've got state censorship, you've got big tech censorship. So the idea that the internet is just this completely unregulated Wild West is a real myth. And I think, you know, the idea of regulating pornography, I don't think is a bad idea, but there's an awful lot of other things that come in with this online safety bill that are about restricting free speech.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're using your pre-prepared remarks on your script to attack things that I haven't said.
Like what?
This is not a discussion about the police.
No, she's responding. You've said the internet's a Wild West.
Yeah,
Joanna's saying that is something that's always said. So she's given you examples of where the internet is controlled.
Yeah.
Be that by, I'll give you an example off the top of my head. If you say anything on social media which even questions the effectiveness of the vaccines, immediately that will have a warning on it, or it will get taken down, or it's like in a nanosecond, the social media companies.
Is that state censorship, or is that private companies making that judgment?
Well, we were talking about it being a Wild West. Is the internet a Wild West? And what you were saying is it's a Wild West basically because of the Tories. Joanna's point, and I think it's a fair point from Joanna, is that actually it's not a Wild West because there's a huge amount of curtailment from various different components, whether it's hate speech that the police are involving themselves in, censorship of what I've just explained. You know, it's not, I don't think it is a Wild West, but it's certainly wilder than it ought to be. Katrina's written in and said, by the way, Michelle, the only person speaking any sense tonight on your show is Peter. There you
go.
Oh, Peter. Peter.
That might be the first and last time.
What?
I have it framed, thank you.
Yeah, is that your mum? Is Katrina your mum? Are you Peter's mum? But yeah, there you go. Katrina says you are the only one of us that is speaking any sense. Let's talk weight loss, shall we? Are you someone who struggles to lose your extra pounds? Well, this might be interesting for you because weight loss jabs are expected to be available on the NHS soon to tackle Britain's obesity epidemic. The jab is called Wegovy, I hope I've pronounced that right, and it's thought to be more effective than having a gastric band. Those taking the jabs are said to have lost on average 2.5 stone, with a third of people trialling the treatment losing a fifth of their total body weight. What do we think to this then? Weight loss jabs, should they be freely available on the NHS? Peter, I'll start with you.
Gosh, well, what can I say? I hadn't heard of Wegovy, and we're all very slim folk on the panel tonight. I think I'll probably be a bit boring and say you need a cost-benefit analysis because obesity costs the NHS money to treat that. So what is the cost of this alternative treatment? Does that protect lives, keep people living for longer and reduce the burden on the NHS over the full lifetime of the people in question? So I think we need to find out more, and I'm probably going to, as boring as it sounds, reserve judgment until we have a bit more evidence about the merits of it versus the other treatments you mentioned, whether they're changing your diet or surgery.
Harriet?
Well, it's much cheaper. I think it's something like £50 a week or something, or a month. I can't. But the fact is that we are one of the most obese nations, and obesity is costing the NHS millions and millions. So this is something that we definitely should be doing. I personally am dead keen on this. I mean, I'm going to be signing up to, what's it called? Wegovy. I'm going to be signing up to Wegovy tomorrow.
That? You're not obese.
Oh, I know, but I love it. Well, I don't see why it should just be for obese people. Some of us have to still not slim down from lockdown. This is lockdown people.
Well, do you know nearly 2/3 of adults in this country are either overweight or obese? Joanna Williams?
Well, I'm slightly sceptical about those statistics. I think if you look at the kind of body mass index, the way obesity is measured, rugby players can be marked down as obese just because their muscle to height ratio kind of tips them over into that category. And yet they're probably the healthiest people in the country. But I think the fact is we get very, very mixed messages about weight. On the one hand, we have this panic about a national obesity crisis. We're told, that companies need to reduce the amount of sugar in their food, that we need sin taxes to encourage people to spend less money on chocolate and fizzy drinks. But then at the other half of the time, we have companies like Nike, for example, putting up adverts showing very overweight people wearing their clothes to kind of promote body positivity. And we're told we need to not be fat phobic. We need to be kind of all really cheering on people and celebrating diverse body sizes. And I think we've lost all sense of proportion and reason. And I think clearly if somebody's got a serious health problem where weight is causing them problems with their heart, their breathing, their ability to exercise, then a jab is a good idea if it helps them lose that weight to be able to get back to being a fit and healthy person, then I'd be all for it. But at the same time, I also think we need to take a few deep breaths and collectively calm down a little bit in relation to this discussion about weight.
Well, lots of you guys, by the way, are still talking about our conversation that we just had a second ago about the online porn. Siam says, Michelle, you should turn this conversation around and see how happy you would be if any site that you wanted to look at, you had to verify your age by putting in, for example, a credit card details. I can honestly say I don't actually think it would bother me.
Like booking a flight, it's no big deal, is it?
Yeah, I don't think it would bother me. And especially if I knew that the reason that I had to do that was because it was very explicit content and the concept was about protecting a child from seeing it. I genuinely, maybe I'm in a minority of one, but I don't think it would bother me. Lots of you are basically saying it's the parents' responsibility, not the state's. Why should the state be doing this? It's for the parents to do it. Patrick says, Michelle, are you for real? I am against any form of censorship. But Patrick, surely you're not against censoring hardcore porn being visible at a click from a child. Or are you? I don't know. Write back in and tell me whether or not you are. Adrian says you can Google something innocently and other items can appear. Yes, this is indeed one of my points. Martin says, well, hang on, because if you watch TV or some films, that's not far from being porn. Agree. But, you know, some TVs and films you mentioned, they have age things on them, age warnings or whatever. Lots of you, I have to say, are getting in contact about that. One of you, I've forgotten, I've lost where it is now. I've got so many emails coming in. So every time I flag one to read, it flies back down the list because you're all firing in. One of you, I can't remember your name, so I do apologise. You wrote in and said the answer to all of this is for there just to be no porn. He went on to say, porn is not realistic, it's not real life. There you go. But do you think you'll ever have a world where there is no porn? I don't know. Let me know. There was a poll running on our Twitter account asking are age checks on adult websites enough to prevent children from accessing porn? Gotta say, so far, nearly 90% of you said no. There you go. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about the footballer who's kicked and hit a cat. Really bizarre story. I talk, of course, about the West Ham defender, Kurt Zouma. You might have seen that video on social media. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. A brief reminder as to who my panel is tonight. We've got Joanna Williams, who's the author and academic. We have Peter Edwards, who's Peter Williams? I'm marrying you two. Did you see what I just did there?
I don't think it would be a match made in heaven.
I'm getting some vibes, obviously, off you two. I've just accidentally married you off. Joanna Williams is not married to Peter. Peter is Peter Edwards. He's the former editor of The Labour List, and Harriet Sargent, who's the author and journalist. Now, let's move on to a story that's got many of you talking today. You might have seen this, the video that's gone viral, to put it mildly, on social media. I talk, of course, about the West Ham defender, Kurt Zouma, hitting his cat. Now, if you've seen this video, you will know it's pretty grotesque, actually. I've decided not to play it tonight. I know it upsets a lot of people. But it's basically this player, he kind of drop kicks, I suppose that's the only word to use really, drop kicks his cat, chases his cat. The cat is picked up and handed to him, and then he smacks the cat onto the floor. you know, you need to see this to understand it's just awful. Anyway, his club have unreservedly condemned the player. He has apologised, it has to say. He's come out and said sorry. And the police are now investigating. Earlier on, the Metropolitan Police said that they would not investigate the incident, but in the last hour, Surrey and Essex Police are saying that they will look into it. Now, it's created quite an uproar, this story, I've got to say. Lots of people are demanding that this guy gets fired from his job. And what do you think to that? Peter, I'll start with you. Should he?
It's a pretty ghastly thing to do. I don't think firing him is helpful at all, but he's a very rich man, like all Premier League footballers, and I'm glad he's apologised. It's really unpleasant, and I think now he's got to make a huge donation to an animal rights charity to put his money where his mouth is.
You see, I think more than that, actually. I think that if you are shown to be treating an animal in this way, he says it was, where's his actual words, just so I don't quote him, he's saying the behaviour was an isolated incident that will not happen again. Sorry, that's not good enough for me.
No.
I actually think that if that's what you do and that's how you treat your animals, you shouldn't be allowed to have animals, full stop. Harriet?
Well, I mean, this story compares with the woman who was found out hunting, slapping her horse around its face, which was, you know, awful as well. But she lost her job and she's being prosecuted. So I think that he should certainly...
Yeah, I mean, don't forget, she did plead, I do have to say, she did plead not guilty to that.
Right, OK, but she was filmed doing that, exactly the same. I mean, I think this is absolutely horrific. And how can it be an isolated incident? I mean, what makes you drop kick an animal and then this poor thing can't escape? It's locked up in the room. Plus, he's doing it in front of a child, as if to say this is normal behaviour. Plus, he's also a footballer, you know, well-known footballer whose behaviour influences a lot of other young people. So I think he should be really punished, actually.
Joanna?
I mean, I agree that the video is absolutely horrific. I've got 2 cats. I'm a cat lover myself. And yeah, it's a really grim and horrible thing to have to watch, and quite what would possess someone to do something like this. I absolutely have no idea whatsoever. But I have to say, I think in what might be a GB News first, hold on to your seat, Peter, because I have to say, I do agree with Peter. I don't think he should be fired for this, and I actually don't think the police should be investigating it. To me, you know, certainly would never want him to ever have a cat again, but the punishment is social shaming. You know, the punishment is the fact that we are talking about him now, that he's being humiliated, that he's being publicly shamed. And if I know anything about football fans, I'm a Middlesbrough fan. You know, football fans are very, very good at dishing out this social shaming to people who've transgressed in this way. And my guess is the next time he turns out to play for his club, there are going to be thousands of people in those terraces booing and name-calling and chanting about what he's done. And to me, that is the punishment that he's going to get probably for the next decade or for the entirety of his playing career. And that's what he should expect. That's the punishment. You know, personally, I'd rather, there's probably, I hate to say it, but there will be children who are being abused in their own homes tonight. And I would far rather the police were busy knocking on the doors of those families and investigating cases of child abuse rather than looking at what we all see with our own eyes is the abuse of a cat.
Yeah, and, you know, we talk about should he play or not. I think he is going to be playing tonight. I don't know, in about an hour or so's time. I think that West Ham are putting him out, which I find staggering, quite frankly. Why would you want that kind of... Surely it's going to be a bit of a distraction when you think about the crowd response. But I also think about the endorsements, you know, that this player will have. If you are shown to have treated a cat in this way, why would a commercial brand want to have you as the face of their product? If I was looking for someone to endorse a product, it wouldn't be someone who's just been filmed hitting and kicking a cat. And by the way, I can't help but wonder, if you behave like that when you know you are being filmed, then what on God's green earth do you do when you're in private? It just makes me shudder, actually, and I just...
Would you sack him? I'm interested in your view. Would you sack him?
Would I fire him? Well, I wouldn't put him out to play tonight. Look at me making out like I'm a football expert now. I am not. But I wouldn't put him out to play tonight. I would certainly wait and see what the outcome of the investigation was. I would hope that he would lose his endorsements, as I've just said. Would I sack him? The challenge is, if I've hired this guy, I've spent 30 million quid or whatever it was, I don't know what his fee was, but I've spent tens of millions of pounds on him, and I've got him as an asset to help me achieve things within my business, i.e. the team. And I think maybe selfishly, I'd probably want to protect that asset.
I think you're being even-handed. Suspension, investigation, a few learnings for Kurt Zouma. He's already apologised. Donation to a charity, and a spell of not playing football. You think would make him focus his mind on what's important in life and on ideas like decency.
But
so I think your solution is not a bad one at all.
I would like, though, to feel that he, not as his boss, but just as a person, I would like to feel that he doesn't own animals again. That would make me, having seen that video and see that he treats an animal like that, I would hope that actually you're not allowed to have pets going forward.
Well, I believe briefly courts can impose such things as animal banning orders, but of course there hasn't been a conviction, but I think that's in the armoury of the law.
Well, we shall see. Anyway, very quick question for any of my panel. Are any of you married, happily married? Harriet?
Well, I'm in a partnership, and I love this thing about the secrets of a good marriage.
Oh, Harriet, you spoiled why I was asking you. There you go. I was gonna ease my way in. Anyway, what I was going to say is, if you want the recipe for a happy marriage, basically it's the following: 6 meaningful conversations, 3 long walks, and 2 barnstorming rows every month. That's apparently the secret. Joanna, did you say you're happily married?
25 years, believe it or not, come August. And I have to say, to me, the secret of being happily married for a quarter of a century is not keeping count of how many meaningful conversations you have or how many barnstorming rows you have. I think as soon as you start to count those things, your marriage is probably unhappy.
So very briefly then, what is it? Very briefly, almost time to go.
Being on the same wavelength as each other, which is a very vague thing to say, but, you know, just getting along with each other.
Peter, are you happily married?
No, I'm a bachelor, so I come on here for my barnstorming rows instead.
Oh, right. Are you looking? Are you open to offers? There you go. The great
Who
British
was that
public.
lady that liked you so much?
I think we're running out of time now.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I think that was Peter. Peter's like, yeah, time check. Well, there you go. Let me know if you're happily married. Is that the answer? Walks and rows and... I don't know. I'm not happily married. It's passed me by, I've got to say, so I have no idea. Anyway, lots of you still getting in touch. Jan says, weight loss jabs on the NHS? Yes. Bring it on. Kathy says, well, hang on, what about the people that are underweight? Why is everything about dieting and obesity? Lots of people I know, including me, she says, lost a lot of weight during the pandemic. Susie says, well, why don't the government spend the money on community gyms and trainers, nutritionists in every town to help people? That'll get them fit. There you go. Anyway, that's where Dickie's just come up with a good idea. Instead of a jab to keep weight off, why not create a pill to help you stay warm in the winter? Maybe they'll come up with that very soon, who knows? Anyway, that is all I've got time for on Dewbs & Co. Thank you very much for your company at home and to my panel. Have a great evening and I'll see you tomorrow.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern and here's your latest forecast. It's going to stay cloudy across England and Wales during the next 24 hours with some rain, but mild in the south. Colder, showery weather continues for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. The UK divided in two at the moment, with the milder air sitting to the south, colder air to the north, and in between an area of cloud and outbreaks of rain, which actually through the evening does pep up a little across North Wales into northwest England before eventually starting to spill a little further south into the North Midlands, parts of West Wales. To the south of that, staying dry with some clear spells overnight, but 8-9 Celsius on the thermometer first thing for Cardiff, London, Plymouth. For Scotland and Northern Ireland, a colder start to the day here with blustery showers and some slippery surfaces because of the overnight frost and ice first thing. And those showers continue for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, falling as snow over hills, and perhaps for central and northern Scotland, even at lower levels, we'll see some sleet and snow at times. Sunshine away from the showers and brightening up for North Wales, North Midlands, whilst it stays generally cloudy to the south of that, with some spots of rain for southern parts of England through the afternoon. And more especially into the evening, actually, there'll be some more persistent rain turning up for southwest and south England. That's associated with that weather front, which is slowly sinking south. Clearer spells to the north,